Welcome to the Zebra Crossing. I'm thrilled to announce our next guest, Mr. Eric E., a distinguished professional with over 15 years of experience in IT architecture, roadmap, and strategy. He has impressive track record across financial, gaming, and government sectors, where he has delivered highly resilient enterprise architecture system and software solutions. Welcome to the Zebra Crossing.
Thank you very much for having me, Janvi.
First of all, could you start by telling us a bit about your background and your journey to becoming the CTO at UBS?
Okay. Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me on this podcast, and hopefully it gives you some interesting insights and topics that we'll be discussing today.
Okay.
So I started off actually as my education background is electrical engineering and embedded systems, so both from a bachelor's and master's. And I immediately, right after college, I was actually working, funny enough, for you on your shirt is NASA. And basically, when they took me in, I was very excited because NASA, it's like, oh, I get to see how we're gonna go to the space and things like that. But very soon, I realized actually it was very focused on developing or programming integrated circuits, or ASICs, right? Application-specific integrated circuits. They're so detailed and so small. And I just go, okay, my small part here, what does that really do in the bigger picture of things, right? And then I thought, okay, maybe I give it a try, but I always wonder, I was always given a set parameter. If I get these feats, I have to do, this certain type of outputs and things like that. But I realized I didn't see the bigger picture. And it's very fast, I lose the interest of what am I doing? And therefore, I also went over to Boeing, Space and Communications, but it was a little bit bigger picture. But however, it's still in a very I have one piece of actually thousands, actually a couple of thousand of these circuits that we have to build in a space and communication capability. So I realized I wanted to try it differently. I soon realized that I wanted to see things in a bigger picture. I want to understand what is it that we're trying to accomplish. And then from there, if I have to focus only on this and that, it will be good because I know what my part is, and maybe this also gives me the context of how to make it better. So I decided to join IBM, and in IBM actually I've done many roles. I went in there first from a innovation lead and researcher. I literally was before the times of iWatch actually. There was actually a big watch we collaborate with Citizen, and it was literally big. It was like a computer on your hand.
Wow.
But it was very cool. It was these are things I was like, okay, great, and there's different detail aspects that I need to work on. Then I thought, okay, let's move into we call it software services or development. So I was working on development. I was also involved in testing because at that time the .com e-commerce days was when I started in IBM, and so there was a lot of big I should say interest, right, and excitement into that. So that was also giving me a lot of experience and understanding. And then with that, I actually grew into the role of an architect. So that's where I focused primarily on financial services. And from there, then it just grew, and my experience grew from that. Different financials, from insurance to retail banks to credit card business, all that was part of my focus. And I thought, okay, that's great. Since I was working for IBM, it was more of these engagements, limited time engagements with these financial services. So I wanted them to be more full time, so that really the entire life cycle and cross a lot of different spectrums of financial services. And ultimately, then that's how I ended up with the company that I'm in right now. And so, from that moment on, with IBM onwards, it was always the architectural aspects, right? Different flavors of architect. Architect is a very broad word, but different forms: software development architect, technical architect, and then ultimately now in my current role in UBS, that this is where I'm focused on. And I still view myself, although the title says CTO, but it's actually a senior architect or a lead architect.
Okay, wow. As a CTO or a Chief Technology Officer, what are the core responsibilities and expectation?
So it's, in essence, I can see a couple of things. One is to ensure that the IT personnel, when I say IT personnel, be it from a product owner, I think you have had previous interviews, product owners, or from a lead senior architects in that context, or even we call them these regional IT leads. That it's to make sure that we convey and to work on a similar vision, a target vision of things, right? It could be different per different regions, right? But in essence, that understanding and that communication with these personnel of what our IT target vision should be and how do we accomplish that. On the other hand, it's also trying to bridge the IT capabilities with what business, when I say business, is our business stakeholders, what they expect and what they need in their terms in order to provide better services for their clients, right, which is actually our end user consumers of our services. So it's that bridge and also the communication of how we do that in a much better way, and also where it helps to build this not just a one-off, but also to build this for fit for future and it's extendable going forward.
Okay.
So this in essence is what my role is as CTO, is to to work with all these multiple stakeholders, ultimately to drive towards a very nice target IT solution.
Can you walk us through your day? What do you do?
So my day consists of many meetings. I think you've heard from your from Ashta or from Surya on different perspective, right? I have constantly meetings with them, with other IT architects, with other product owners, to ensure that I always base on a target vision of their focus areas. How are we going towards the right direction of achieving that vision? Now, it's not always a straight line, right? And in fact, it shouldn't be always a straight line. It should be how do we, what are areas that we should improve? Because maybe my view of how we should achieve that same vision that they have may be a different way. And I think it's good to have this constant collaboration and engagement and constructive discussions, to be honest. I really mean constructive, to achieve that, because it may be a better idea, maybe a better approach. And I think this is where we constantly have these design review sessions to discuss that. On other times, we have these discussions where maybe it's not so pleasant, where there are challenges on maybe shortcuts that needs to take place and things, or maybe not. I wouldn't say shortcuts, maybe another approach to reduce the adoption of such a capability. So it depends on the context of that. It may be something that we absolutely have to not agree on. We cannot agree on, and we have to then say, look, we have to do it this way because it might imply certain risks implications on top. So it's that, and also communicating with senior stakeholders, where we have to convey what is the status, where are we, if everyone says what is the whole layout of the environment. These communication are taking place with the senior stakeholders.
Okay, so to reach your vision and for effective communication, how do you manage and inspire your team? What is your leadership style? It's
a good question, and I think there are many styles. It's not to say one is good or another is better or not. But for me, I like to really empower the people that I work with. Right? I don't like to micromanage. I like to say, give me your status. Tell me what are you doing on a day, because everyone's capable, right? Everyone has a way of, I don't want to disrupt the way of their thinking, because it doesn't mean that the way I think may be the right way. I personally believe that there needs to be diversity from different perspectives, be it gender, race, even from a professional background perspective, because it gives really different perspective. And sometimes thinking out of the box is highly encouraged. So I like to do that with the people that I collaborate with. So empowerment to me is giving them the flexibility to think and to also come up with the designs and approaches to things, right? Of course, with certain guardrails. What I mean by that is not like rules that you basically narrow someone to do that. There are certain patterns that we have to follow. But on top of that, the innovative thought process is something that I highly encourage, because that's the beauty of IT actually. There is not one way, but IT is a tool for you to use. How you want to use it to build something, it's sometimes flexible, very flexible. So again, That's how I encourage the community that I work with. And also, don't be afraid to challenge the norms.
Okay.
Or the situation. So that's also empowerment, because doesn't mean I empower you, you go and solve the problems, you face the difficulties. No, but it's also to help them, to empower them to think and to be creative, right? But also to help them if they face these sometimes in some situations where it needs further discussions. It may not be pleasant ones. But I think that way it supports them fully on the empowerment journey. Because if you empower them and then once they hit a challenge and then you say, no, you're on your own, that's not empowerment for me. Empowerment means actually really giving them and supporting them the way to be innovative and to do what they think is the right direction to achieve the target, with them the support if they face difficulties or roadblocks. This to me is empowerment.
Okay.
That way it further encourages them, because then they feel that I have the accountability, I have the ownership, and also the association of the pride and accomplishment that they have with it. So
Okay.
this to me is very important.
How do you collaborate with other executives to align technology and initiative with business objectives?
Okay. I think one of the things, transparency. It's very key. Sometimes transparency is not to say it's always positive, right? I mean, people might not like to hear what is really real, but I don't put it where, okay, this is it and that's the reality of it. I say, look, this is the current situation. How can we address, or how do we potentially can address? I think it's where it helps with the transparency. Because if you say this is transparency and, oh, sorry, I can't do anything, it is what it is, I think that this is not helping. But if you say this is what maybe a challenge or what the situation is, and this is potentially how we can resolve it. But of course, it could be options that may not be selected. But I think the value that, at least when I interact with my stakeholders, senior stakeholders, they understand, okay, you have thought through it. Maybe it may not be the same options that they want to use or they want to achieve. However, at least there is that discussion and consideration. So it's the value add that you give them a proposal. So this is the way I normally approach my stakeholders and give them that. And I also like to give them sort of the holistic picture. Sometimes IT, as IT personnel, we would like to go into the nitty-gritty details, and we tell them, in the technical knowledge, and then sometimes senior stakeholders go, okay, maybe can you tell me in English what that really means? So it's also the translation of that. So again, it goes back to the bigger picture of things, right? Telling them the bigger picture of something, and then if they need to go a little bit deeper, you slowly go one level down. So that communication would be understandable, because we always assume that they would understand what we are saying, and vice versa, because business language might not be the same as what we understand. So we need to see how, and that's the bridge that I normally I would also do.
Okay. Taking a slight tangent.
Yep.
What are some of the challenges you faced as a CTO, and how did you overcome them?
So there are three always dimensions that we always face when it comes to delivering something. It could be maybe time to market, could be sometimes costs. Sometimes now we have the terms of capacity, because given that maybe the nature of something, a different priority takes place, and therefore the capacity shifted over there. So it's a balance, and I think sometimes the way to approach it is we still always keep in mind what is our target, what is it that we want to accomplish. Now, initially maybe one project may have taken us 50% towards that journey. Now, given these constraints, what are the trade-offs that we have to reduce no matter what, because we understand that we cannot achieve that 50%. But of whatever we reduce, what can we do that it's still towards this progression of what we want to achieve? And if we do that, I think it's okay, because it might just take us a longer time. But don't go with on a completely different way to achieve that 50%. And this basically would encourage more costs and more effort to put us back on that path. I think that's always the challenge and the context that I always have to keep in my mind, to say if we were to go in this decision, would this actually still help us to go achieve that? Or it would, in essence, everything would we can always converge back to the target. It's what's the effort and what's the the risks or all these aspects in order for us to achieve that target state.
Okay.
So that's really key. Yeah.
So in the ever-evolving tech or even fintech landscape,
Yeah.
how do you stay ahead of the curve while leveraging the latest technology?
Okay, that's a good question. I mean, and I think it's important that everyone needs to take the time to, be it, educate themselves. Learning. To be honest, I'm constantly learning, even to today. I mean, no one would be an expert on all the proliferation of all these technologies. There's just so much now compared to when I started, which was VHDL, AHDL, which are these specific languages. I started off with Borland C, and then I went into Java, and then after that, now with .NET, I couldn't catch up, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be an expert in all of that, or even Python. Who knew that Python actually re-emerged again? But the point is, you need to set aside some time to really at least understand what are the trends, what are the areas that are coming up, be it for fintech, be it for even new technology, right? And from there, you really need to set aside. I mean, it's good. I'm very happy that our company actually gives us the time to really educate ourselves, and it's self-learning, self-certification on things. But also on a personal note, all right? You also, if you're a techie, you're motivated to find out what's the new technologies. So that is one way. The other thing is also engaging in forums, so like the fintech forums. I mean, because of financial industry, these are more of the leading edge innovators in this industry. So attending these forums. Sometimes I attend physical events that are in Hong Kong, or I join them virtually or things like that. There are a lot of these, and I engage myself in that.
Okay.
And it's good to really understand what is the thinking there. On top of it, I mean, I mentioned, I think previously I mentioned about Slashdot. I'm a really huge follower of Slashdot because it's news for nerds, for those that may not know. And I always constantly follow that because it gives you the context, be it for what's the new technology or how this technology is being used and things. It's really news, right? And that also gives you a lot of insights to what's happening, because it's very hard to if you don't follow these, you don't know what is being talked about, right? And then of course the buzz of ChatGPT. But again, we can talk more about that in further discussions. But to be engaged in, to understand and to be engaged in these forums, I think, and to set aside that time for you to really read through that, so to always nurture yourself and educate yourself with new things, I think it's really important.
Okay. With so much new tech coming out, how do you choose which tech to implement with your organization?
I mean, it would be nice we can always implement the new things. I mean, we all, as techies, right, we really love technology. So be it software technology, hardware technology, we would like to do it. However, depends on and for me at the moment, it's driven by the industry that I'm in, because to select a new tech, we have to take into consideration a few key factors. One is the risks that it would introduce. What I mean by that is, from a security perspective, we have to be very, very strict on how we ensure security. We don't want, example, we don't want any client data breach. We don't want any, wrong client interactions or anything of that sort. Also, the client experience is very important. So with that, we have to use that context to review the technologies that we want to use. And often, there are times that we would adopt new ones, but we may not be the first adopters at this point. Of course, I would love to do that, but it's more of on your personal time and my personal environment that I try these things, because then I understand how do you set this up, or what does this do, and things like that. Versus when you come into an enterprise context, you need to have these dimensions in place, and with that lens to review a technology. And with that, of course, we have to go very stringent several rounds with other expertise in my industry to then review if this is right for the usage for our bank.
Okay.
So it's very important that this depends on the context of you adopting. We would like to adopt, but it's just really making sure that they comply to our minimum standards first.
You talked about security.
Yes.
How do you ensure the security and resilience of your IT infrastructure?
Yeah. So there are definitely defined patterns that I would say we have defined. So what that means is there is a checklist of things that a design solution has to go through. If they do not go through these very stringent approach of how we secure the client context of a client engaging to a system, or a system engaging to another system, these things are all defined in the approach that we actually have to follow, because this is where we ensure that there are no security breaches or any risk coming out from that. If there is a reason why, or if there was a request where it doesn't comply or follow this, we will have to review it, and we have to really stringently understand what is the reason for that. Oftentimes we would not allow such a thing. I mean, and because these patterns that I mentioned are supporting a majority of the use cases that we always have in our industry at this point. So again, that's how we measure it, because these are already known best practices, and this is proven that this would remove any potential security breaches. Similar from a resilient perspective, I think you asked me that in the question. Again, the nature of our business, we cannot have if from an order placement perspective, it's very sensitive, it's time sensitive. We have to make sure that our systems are resilient in any scenario, be it from a network outage or from a whatever impact that it may have to cause a disruption. So we have to design systems to make sure that we provide the continued resilience, so that it does not disrupt the client experience. How we do that is, again, based on the context of resilience. We have a defined set of approaches and patterns that we have to follow. In fact, there's a set of minimum that you have to do, and can grow beyond, right, depending on the sensitivity of the systems itself. So I think this is very important, that these are guidelines that we absolutely have to adhere to. If not, it's going to be a risk.
You have a strong involvement in fintech. How do you see this industry evolving, and what role does the CTO play?
Okay, so definitely fintech is very important, because I think for fintechs, it's based on the financial industry, and a lot of these fintechs have a lot of experience in the financial industry. But what they add on top of it is actually these innovative approaches to either to enhance the existing capabilities that are offered in the financial services. In some cases, actually, they offer very unique, specific niche functionalities that this market does not have. So I think it's very important to understand where the market and trends are in the context of fintech, and also to potentially leverage. I think it's very important, because I always feel that for the financial is actually we have a very unique ecosystem, because the way things work, be it from a wealth management, be it from an interactive investment bank, for asset view, all these things actually are working in a very unique ecosystem. Now, the fintechs add these other additional peripherals around it and everything else, but it may introduce actually new ecosystems. And when I say that, it's ecosystems like it could be in the car manufacturing industry. They have their own set of ecosystem, their own value chains and things. Similarly for financial services, these fintechs may actually have additional extensions to it, or bridges. I think it's very important to always consider that, and to look what is in that space. As a CTO perspective, we have to also understand what is out there. Maybe because sometimes our interactions with business stakeholders, they ask for requirements, and the experience we have with the CTO, the fintechs, will be good to maybe say, oh, by the way, your requirement actually, either there's a provider that might have that, which is very niche and helps the business, or it may be more of leverage it to extend what our offerings are, which makes it even much more enticing for our consumers to use our services. So it's really that engagement, that thought process. I think it has to be factored in. So we have these innovative streams in our industry, and I think it's always to constantly engage what is outside of fintech, and also to see how we can include, or maybe to even leverage.
Okay. What emerging technologies do you see making a significant impact on the financial industry in the next few years?
Yeah, I think everyone talks about AI, ChatGPT. I think it's good. It's a very important tool. I think we still are trying to understand how do we leverage this. I mean, the use case right now is always self-servicing. So customer service, or you give it a context, it will respond back, based on your ask. But it would never be able to, sort of think on its own, or maybe analyze it on its own. So with that, because we sit on a lot of data be it from a financial perspective or any other industry, there's a lot of data, especially a lot of consumer data, a lot of all this necessary data. And how do we? For me, it's data analytics. To be in short, I mean, it's not a new concept, but it was never to the point of how do we analyze to a point where it generates other propositions, values, or other insights that we can use from, of course, revenue generation perspective, or from a risk perspective, or for all these pre-detections. It's more of that it's so that it's more of a proactive state of handling of a situation, versus a post reactive mindset of saying, if something happens, only then we do this. I think this is where we still have not really grown quite a bit. We have now the computing power to do all this, but I think we just don't have the algorithms yet to constantly try to extract and leverage the amount of data that we have. So to me, this is my personal passion, is actually on the data analytics side of things, and how do we really look into that and proactively just monitor. And I think this fascinates me, right? And that's where I always try to look at articles or industries that are really advanced in that state.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How do you balance short-term needs with long-term strategic goals in the reference to enterprise architecture?
Okay, so enterprise architecture is always, that is our target, our vision. We always have there. I mean, I always am a believer that, and it's also for personal life or any other aspects, right? We always have an ambition. We always have a target state that we want to achieve. Now, how we do that, and these are steps. Now, it could be short term, it could be long term. But I always believe that for any decisions that we make, be it in the designs that we review and we talk about, or we plan for, these should be short term, not in a sense where these are short term tactical, but these are short term, building blocks that we ultimately build towards the strategic part, so that we don't either, these are not sunk costs, or these are not things that we have to rewrite, which means cost, time, and everything. So we're already spending the effort to do it, even though if it's a short, or I should say smaller chunks, that should be the focus, and that should be the driver to go towards it. It may be slower because, again, I think previously the dimensions, right? Time to market, money, budget-wise, and capacity. There are always going to be these factors that would influence the pace and also the decisions that we make. However, I would always say short term, to me, is always short term that is tactical. Short term that is strategic. We should not make something that is short term that is tactical, because every tactical decision we make always means we have to go back and redo it, or make some big changes in order to ultimately achieve our enterprise architecture approach.
What advice would you give to aspiring CTOs and students like me who are entering the field?
Yeah, I think maybe I start with this. My mentor before in IBM, he's actually retired now. It's been quite some time ago. It's always this T model, right? It's the depth in one aspect, which you're specialized. Could be based on your educational background or things, but it's the breadth. And don't be saying, okay, I'm only in this capacity, so I only focus on this. It's good, you can be a subject matter expert in that, but to be CTO or as an architect, it's always the overall, the breadth of the view, right? It's always high level, holistic view of things. That's how you need to build up your breadth. So that means experiences, be it from a testing perspective. I mean, I can speak for myself. Is I was a tester, so I understand what that means. What is expected from a design, so that from a test, you can always leverage on those experience from a software development perspective, from a hardware engineer perspective, right? Or from your personal background on outside of your professional career. That perspective also helps you to build this. Logical, say logical thinking is also a very good thing to imply here, to apply here, right? So all these pieces that makes this T model on top, the breadth, would then help you to shape, be it from an architectural role perspective, a lead as an architect perspective, or where CTO, because actually it's all CTO would have to encapsulate, or would have to always take into consideration all these factors when it comes to a decision. And I think that's something that if you're heading down towards this path, experience different things. I mean, I think the likes of as a product owner, I think in your previous podcast, you can understand what that means, right? It's also planning, prioritization, understanding how you want to evolve and what's your direction. That's also a part of this T. Or from a very senior developer perspective, again, they have the experience of how they want to code it to meet that standard. Also an experience, because the way you design something also impacts how you would the impact of how the coding would be and how efficient it will be. So these are all interlinked, so or interdependent. So I think that skill itself would help guide you towards, be it if you want to be a CTO, or be it even a senior executive in the IT world, or even in general. I think it helps to shape this path.
Okay. Do you have any final notes or key takeaways for our audience?
I think first of all, again, thank you very much for having this for spending the time and interviewing me and giving me this opportunity to speak. And I hope it was helpful for you and for the audience that are looking. And thank you very much for staying and for listening to this. I think in general, I think to sum it up, where I am today, I think it's a diversity of things that I've been engaged in. Also, but very important, it's normally, and I think it goes for everything in life, it's not just one person that actually helps you to be that. I think one of the things is very key is the collaboration that you have to work with. I mean, the folks that I work with, I have to give them a lot of credit, and they're very good, very inspiring. They also challenge me, which is good. I like that, because it shouldn't be one way. No one can be an expert in everything, and you always have to then empower, and that's why the empowerment comes in, and working with the various different people of different perspective to help you to achieve that, right? Because once you share that common vision of what we want to do in the IT context, everyone aligns to that, and there would be different ways and different approaches, and we all work together to find that best approach to bring it forward.
Okay.
So I think this is really important. So in anyone's career or in any topics, I think that collaboration is something that I find it very important.
Thank you so much for your time today and your insightful advice.
Thank you very much for having me. Again, appreciate it, and lovely having this discussion with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in today. Do like and subscribe, and do leave a comment telling what topic you want me to talk on next. Thank you.
Thank you.